Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my number 4 Facebook Live session with you, where I just want to give you some tips on how to get through these interesting times. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Natasha Rosewood. I am a quantum healer, inspired and intuitive intelligence, and author. And tonight we're going to talk about good grief, 5 great reasons why grieving is good for you. So, the thing about grief is, in our lifetimes, we all suffer loss of some kind or another, whether it's obviously losing somebody that we love that passes on. Sometimes it can be about somebody that loved us and doesn't love us anymore. It can be a pet, career, loss of a dream of status, or an actual loss of status. We lose the ability sometimes to keep doing a talent or a hobby due to financial or physical constraints. And when people have accidents or go through traumas, they have to make a major adjustment to a different lifestyle. That can be a very good reason to grieve what has been lost. And in my experience with my clients, so many of us are walking around with like a big lump of unresolved grief sitting in our stomach area, which obviously isn't very good for our health. So I'm going to just give you 5 reasons why we kind of need to do this. The main thing I notice is that in our Western culture, unlike the women of the Middle East who, when they lose somebody, we often see this on the news where they're howling over the burial sites for the loss of their loved ones. And I know in Egypt, at least, they call it the first grief, and they're allowed and encouraged to really release that so they can get on with the healing process. But in our culture, we're told the opposite. It's not very dignified to cry in public or let your emotions be shown. And what that does to us is we feel like we need to swallow it. Suck it up is a common phrase. Aren't you over that yet? A girlfriend of mine lost her girlfriend on the Sunday, went to her funeral, and 4 days later, her colleague is saying, well, aren't you over that yet? What's your problem? So with that kind of culture, we don't feel very safe in expressing ourselves when we're feeling sad. And I've noticed, especially when it comes to losing our pets, because some people say, oh, it's just a dog or it's just a cat, when they don't realize how important and cherished that animal was in the family structure. So I believe that loss and grieving is part of our human process, and we need to go through it in order to grow. It's part of the deal. So if we're not grieving and we're stuffing it down, we're not moving forward. And that's why so many of my clients, I believe, come and say, Natasha, I'm feeling stuck. And the first thing I'm going to look at is does this person have unresolved grief? So the first good reason for grieving is a pain that is shared is a pain that is halved. And I'm sure you've had this experience where you've shared something that wasn't so good and it's like felt so good or so much better to have unloaded and shared or dumped on a friend, so you're not feeling the full weight of that, and to get feedback on that. So it's difficult sometimes to find the right person who will understand your grief, will validate your pain, and really empathize. But if you can find that person, whether it's a friend, a counselor, psychic, a spiritual healer, if you can go to that person and just say, listen, I need you just to listen to me. I need to unload. You don't need to say anything. You just need to be there for me. And if we can find that person, stick with them and do that, because you'll feel this tremendous release. When we don't do that, we often kind of feel separate or isolated from other people. And that's kind of not a good place to be, especially in your grief, because that means your depression and your isolation might go on for much longer than it needs to go on for. So if you can find that person, bond with that person, share your story, you're going to feel reconnected to yourself again, You're going to probably bond with that person, and you're also going to feel more like you're connected still to humanity, that you're not on the side, you're not separate from everybody else because you're in pain. And when you look back, everybody seems like they're having a good time or they're okay. That's a very lonely feeling, especially when you're grieving. Know that a lot of people are carrying around stuff, and they've, like you, they're putting on the brave face. Number 2, the reason, great reason to grieve is when you grieve properly, and what grief is, it's a process of allowing yourself to go through feeling the gamut of emotions. So anger, rage, denial, sometimes guilt, sometimes remorse, loss. All these things are going to be passing through you. And if you process them healthily, and like I say, share with somebody, you're going to get through this faster, and you're going to release it out of your body. So I'm just noticing that Pauline Dow joined. Hi, Pauline, all the way from Halifax. I hope you're safe out there. And hi, Marie Martin. I want to give a shout out for Marie because she's always doing amazing work as well. So thanks for joining and listening. So like I say, number 2 is when you allow yourself to grieve, you're going to really do a lot for your health. Grieving is like a big cloud that kind of settles in and it comes down over you. It's a stress, it's a form of stress. And we want to be very nurturing while we go through it. All those feelings are very natural, but when you, over time, you don't process it or allow those feelings to process, you build up toxins in your body, and those toxins can make you vulnerable if in the long term you don't grieve properly. Those toxins can make you vulnerable to a compromised immune system, and then disease and heart failure and blah, 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 blah. But we're not going to go there because we're going to grieve, aren't we? And we're going to grieve healthily. So when you do that, you'll just feel this relief and this release, and you'll feel like you have more energy, and you feel like you want to get up and you want to get on with your day, because you know what? You're a human being, and you're just in a process of going through a very natural thing that happens to everyone in their lifetime at some point. Okay, so number 3, good reason to grieve properly is you want to avoid attracting more grief. Because what I've seen with some people is that they haven't grieved the first event, and sometimes that's in childhood, sometimes it's in teens. But say it's something happened that was unjust, and that person just will not let it go, and they still perceive themselves as a victim in that. So they put themselves in a certain frequency, a low frequency, and in that frequency, like attracts like. So what's going to happen is they're going to, if they don't release it and let go, attract more of the same. And we don't want to do that. And so when that other thing happens, it's like layer upon layer upon layer, because you keep attracting these events, which keeps causing more grief. And the grief doesn't double, but it actually compounds. I call it compound grief. And so finally the person feels like so heavy and overwhelmed, and why are all these things happening to me, and I can't get a break. I think in the end, they finally realize something has to change, and I think it has to be me. And they normally end up sitting in front of me, which is when I say, guess what? You might have created this for a learning. So let's turn it around, look at it as a gift, release it, so that you can go into a high frequency where you don't attract that negativity anymore. So number 4 reason is why you should grieve and why it's good for you is you can heal faster and completely. Hi, Melanie. Thanks, Melanie, for calling from the island. I'm going to talk to you soon, so I'm really looking forward to that. I love it when people join me and come on here. So number 4 is when you really allow this process to just pass through you, you're going to heal faster and completely. So there's going to be no residue. The event will have gone through you. You will have released it. You will have learned from it, and you put it on the shelf. It definitely is still there, but you're not attached to the emotion of it. So what the Buddhist suggests in healing is that you first write a story about what happened to you as it happened. And the poor me voice, you know, oh my God, this happened, poor me, why did this happen? I don't understand. And all your anger and all your grief, and just get it out of your body. This is the big deal here. We want it out of the body. Then the second version is you write it as if it happened to somebody else. So it's like, oh, you're observing this, you're in the witness self, and you're seeing it from a slightly more detached point of view, probably having compassion for that person, being able to see from a different point of view why they would be feeling that way, why they would be behaving, having compassion for the self. And then the third version is, and this might take a little time, especially if it's really a deep trauma or you've lost somebody, is to write about that loss as if it's the funniest thing that's ever happened. And that's the most challenging, but you know when you get to that place, if you can bring humor and see it as just an event, that, you know, you can give it a bad or sad or good or great meaning, you attach the meaning to it and you get the understanding of it, that's when you can write about it as if it's a funny event. And I happen to believe that God is a comedian, and if once we get to the humor part, we've made it and we're completely past the event. So the number 5 good reason why we should grieve is because if we don't grieve, we're not going to be able to get to the joy again. Like I said in number 1, you know, I understand that you don't want to grieve because it means going through the pain. And what a lot of us do, and I've done to a degree, as I've gone numb. And so if I don't feel anything, I don't have to feel the pain, but on the other hand, I can't feel the joy. And the joy is what's on the other side of this grieving process. So that's where people get stuck. So if you can imagine that your energy is like a river, and I think you've heard me talk about this before, and then you're going off on your way to the ocean where you become your greater self, and suddenly this log comes down, which represents the event, the loss, the grief, comes right down in the middle of the river, blocks the river goes into little eddies and spews everywhere, there's chaos everywhere. And if we don't grieve, that log is going to kind of stay there. So what we want to do is to be able to remove the log so we can carry on. And I know this takes time, and grief is a very strange beast. We can turn into monsters and say things we don't mean and behave very, very strangely, even to ourselves. So please, if you're going through the first throes of grief, be very compassionate, with yourself and then everybody around you, because remember, they might be experiencing that as well. So I want to thank you all for coming on tonight. I'm trying to be briefer as I go through these tips so you can get on with your dinner or your evening. And I just want to encourage you to grieve and feel what you're feeling, because you're always right about how you feel. And your grief is your grief. Nobody else can tell you what you should feel, how long you should take. It's very personal to you. The only thing I would say, if it does go on for years and years and years, there might be something else, another dynamic that's keeping you stuck. So you know where to come. I'm here. Marie Martin does also some great work in removing blocks. Come to Natasha at natasharosewood.com or my website, natasharosewood.com. Next week, I won't be able to be live with you because I'm going on a short trip to San Francisco to see girlfriends. So I'm going to send you, though, some little tips. It won't be live, but there'll be something there. Don't know what yet. And in the meantime, I just want you to really love yourself, be compassionate, cherish yourself, know that you're an amazing human being, goddesses, gods and goddesses in the process of becoming, and I will see you on the bright side. Bye-bye.